Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Paper Crafting Thursday. I'm Leslie Watkins and I have a really fun techniques class coming right up for you today. So if you're someone who is a stamper and you've been having some questions or issues on how to color some of these stamp sets, I'm going to give you a complete lesson on the berry harvest today. And this is a really pretty pattern, okay? It features these raspberries and leaf motif. As you can see, it's a great big stamp. This is a full-size stamp, and you can use it to create an entire sheet of decorative series paper. So if you want to work with a piece of paper that was 12 inches by 12 inches or bigger, then you could use this as a block and just stamp all over the whole thing and get a really nice pattern. I'm not going to be working that large today because in these short videos I'm not going to have time to finish the whole thing, but I'll show you how to get started. And if it's something that that intrigues you, that you're curious and learning more about, I'm going to give you some information in a little bit on a special class that I have where I'm going to go through this step by step. So I'm using the Berry Harvest. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be this stamp set. You can use any stamps you like, but I just really like this design. I also have my great big clear block. So this is the F block and it's quite large. It measures 6 inches by 5 inches, and you really need to have one of these when you're using one of these giant stamps. Okay, so you can see the stamp fills the entire piece of rubber, and this is a rubber stamp, which means that you're going to get a nicer impression and it's going to last you forever. So this is a really good investment. I will have a link below after the video for all of the materials that you see me using today. So don't worry about trying to write anything down or looking for anything. There will be a link that'll take you right to a complete list. And it also has a link to the video in case you want to re-watch it. So that's my stamp. I'm just going to peel off this backing. And then get that situated nicely on there. Make sure I'm not too close to any of the edges. And there it is. It fits just perfectly. And this is a nice heavy block, so you're going to get a really good impression. And that stamp just adheres perfectly to the block. I'm also going to be using the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. This is 100% cotton paper. It's archival. It is a very nice quality of watercolor paper. It's 140 pound and it has a kind of a rough finish. So this is going to work perfectly and it's just the right size. I have my water painters, and they come 3 to a pack. There is a fine tip. Actually, this is the fine tip. All right, so it comes to a nice point. This is the medium. And then you also get a flat brush. Okay, so it's just a standard flat. I'm going to probably be using the medium for most of the work, and then I'll switch to the fine tip at some point. These water painters have a reservoir within the handle where you can put some water, but just to speed up the process today, I also have a cup of water off to the side. And for ink, I'm using a very pale colored ink, so any pale color will work. Now, you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, you have to use StazOn ink or some other ink that's going to leave a heavy black line and that won't be affected by the water. But I'm going to tell you the opposite, because you don't want your image to look like a coloring book. There are a lot of different ways of putting the image on your paper. You could heat emboss it and create kind of an enamel effect. You could use clear heat embossing or a metallic. But today I'm going to show you the fine art approach, the way I would do if I were painting a watercolor. But I'm going to be using water-based inks. So I'm using the very same inks that we use to replenish our stamp pad. So these are liquid inks, and you can use them just like liquid watercolors. They're dye-based, so they work a little bit differently than some of the pigments, but essentially the technique is the same. And I just have red, yellow, and blue. That's all you need. Just pick a nice red, yellow, and blue that's going to coordinate with your project, whatever it may be. You could use this to make something 3D, like a little box. You could use it on the back of a tag. You could use it on the front of a note card. I mean, it's just endless. These are wonderful things to have on hand, and they are a lot of fun to do. So any kind of light ink will do, because you want that edge to melt and blend into your painting and disappear. I'm not looking for a lot of outlines on this. I want it to look more like a painting, less like an illustration. So I've got my piece of Fluid 100 watercolor paper. And because this is an oversized stamp, rather than taking it to the ink pad and tapping in it like that, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to take my ink pad and I'm going to ink up my stamp from the top down. So I'm putting plenty of ink on there. Now I want to test it. I want to see how dark that looks. So I've got a piece of scrap paper here. All right, so this is just a piece of grid paper that's wrapped around a foam pad. And if you have a foam pad, this is also available. It's called a piercing pad. It makes a very nice surface to stamp on. It helps you to get a nice impression. So let's just see what this looks like. I'm going to give it a nice firm press all over the surface. And there is my impression. And you can see that it's kind of a pale color, and that's pretty much just right. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to center this on my watercolor paper. I'm going to stand up for this so I can see where I'm placing it. Give it a good press. And there's my pattern. Now, there are lots of times when I want to use my own original art and do a quick sketch or a more detailed sketch. But in this case, if you want to do a lot of repetitive images, this is a great way that you can save time and just use the stamps over and over again. All right, so next I just want to decide if there is a top or the bottom, and looks like it could go either way, but I think I'm going to do it this way, except, oh, I'm going to do it this way so you can see better on the screen. So that looks good to me. All right, so I'm just going to zoom you in so that you can get a good look at what I'm doing. Get that, oops. My zoom is very enthusiastic, so let's see, that looks pretty good. All right. And I'm not going to be able to finish the whole thing today, but I'm going to take it as far as I can within reason, and then I will post the finished art after I'm done. So let me just check my settings, make sure that you can see and hear me. And yes, that looks good. And I see Kelly and Vicky. Kelly says she loves the stamp. Yes, it is a really pretty stamp, and I've been looking forward to using it for a while now, so I'm so glad that today's the day. Partly because I really want to make sure that I used it during berry season, and we're just here in New England where I live. We're kind of on the tail end of berry season now, but there still are a few little berries here and there that that are really delicious if the birds don't get to them before you. Okay, so I'm just going to, using my three colors, my red, yellow, and blue, I'm just going to begin by mixing a pale green, and I'm just going to start by just working out where my leaves are. And I'm not going to do a lot of talking today. I'm going to concentrate on the painting so I can get it done a little bit faster. If you have any questions, I will be going into the comments in a little while. I'll take a break and I'll look to see if anybody has any questions. So let me know where you're watching from. Let me know what you're up to this weekend. And please go ahead and post your questions. And by the way, you can see that even though I am moistening the stamped image, it's not disappearing entirely, okay? It may be softening just a tiny bit, but there is plenty of information there to help guide me through the painting. So don't feel like you're limited to just the StazOn ink to do this. I actually very much prefer the water-based inks, and I think you'll have very good luck with that. Also, of course, you're going to have so many more options when you do it this way. All right, so you can see pretty much in just a minute or two, I'm about halfway done with getting my leaves started. Doesn't take much. Don't worry about, don't get all fussy and worried about going inside the lines. It's not about that. In the painting with ink class that's coming up, where I use this stamp and these materials, you will learn much, much more about color mixing. You'll be able to see my palette as I mix the colors, and you'll be able to learn more about the thought process that goes behind making an overall design like this. and you'll also get some ideas and inspiration on what to do with your finished piece. Okay, so now I'm taking a little bit of the yellow, and I'm just going to, it's got a touch of the red in it, not a lot, and I'm going to start getting my berries established. And I don't want them all to look just the same, so I'm going to be varying the color as I go along. So this is, I'm just starting with this pale mixture, and then I'll add a little more red, maybe a little more blue. So however the area strikes me. So you're going to be doing a little bit of intuitive painting here. That's a hot trend going on right now, intuitive painting, which is to let the process take you where it will. And we're going to do a little bit of that. I mean, there's nothing new about that. Old masters have been doing that for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But we're going to give it a little more thought in terms of the overall design. So blending a little bit of intentional painting with your intuitive painting, I think that's going to give you the best of all worlds. Right, so now if I wasn't talking the whole time, I would be just about, I'd say about a third of the way done here. In the workshop, I will also be talking about how to shade things so that you can get a three-dimensional effect with your picture rather than just dabbing at things willy-nilly. Okay, there is a logic behind shading that that will help you immensely when you're painting. In order to learn more about this workshop, Painting with Ink, where I feature this stamp, which is the Berry Harvest stamp, I'm going to be announcing that in notes from Dandelion Cottage. So if you're on my mailing list, you're going to be getting that in a couple of days. And if you're not on my mailing list, please subscribe to Notes from Dandelion Cottage, because that's how I announce all of my classes and workshops and where you will be able to find the link to register for them, and a whole bunch of other things. There are specials, a little bit more about me, a little bit more about Dandelion Cottage and the chickens and the gardens and what's new, and all sorts of things. So please be sure to make sure that you're on the mailing list for Notes from Dandelion Cottage. And I will also be placing that link in the description below after I do the live video today, because I can't do that obviously until the video is posted and up. Right, so I'm just paying attention now to the stems, to some of those little leaves that are at the top of the berries. I guess they're actually sepals. And I would say that at this stage I've got all of the design started. So there we go, and you could leave it just like this. I mean, this would be very pretty as is, but I'm going to take this a few steps further. And what I'd like to do is I want to put a little bit of a background. So I'm going to go ahead and mix a very pale, kind of a muddy, I'm just sort of mixing what's on my palette here, kind of a muddy, cool violet. And I'm going to keep that very, very light. I'm just going to make my way around. And by the way, if you're not using water-based inks, you can do exactly the same thing as I'm doing with your watercolors. So either way, and essentially it'll be the same if you were using the watercolor pencils. But I think the effect is a little bit nicer when you use the inks or the watercolor. The blender pen, the blends alcohol markers would essentially be the same, but you've got a lot more limitations with the blends because you're using the pre-mixed colors, whereas when you mix your own color using the water-based inks, not only is it exponentially cheaper, but you also have a lot more control, and you can do a lot more different types of techniques. So much more freedom when you're working with a brush and water-based inks and or watercolor. also a lot easier. Once you get a little bit of practice and a little know-how, I think you'll find that it's a whole lot easier to do your coloring this way. Not that there aren't wonderful applications for using the blends, there absolutely are, but for doing something a little more artistic, I think this is the way to go. Alright, so there is what I would call my underpainting. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now as I went around, I noticed that there were a couple of little leaf areas that I missed, so I'm just going to go back and see if I can find those. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to pause in just a second and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, let's see. I see, oh, I've got some new people. Ananda. Hi, Ananda. Thank you so much for joining. And Beverly says she hesitated on getting this stamp. Never too late. No, never too late. And by the way, Beverly, if you get the stamp before the 31st, you'll also qualify for those bonus coupons. For those of you who don't know, just for the month of July, it's called bonus days, and that means that for every $50 you spend on paper crafting materials, you get a $5 coupon that you can apply to another order in the month of August. And that's especially exciting because coming up, we're going to be having some new and interesting things, so stay tuned for that. Sandra says hi from California. Hi, Sandra. Ananda says, what colors are you starting with? I'm just using 3 colors, Ananda, red, yellow, and blue. And you can use whatever colors you like, whatever colors give you the mixtures that you want. So, you know, depending on if it's a project that you're going to be working with for, in addition to with cardstock, with ribbon, with embellishments, or whatever it may be, whatever your color palette is. So it's entirely up to you. You're in charge. Okay, I think it goes this way. Does it go that way? It really doesn't matter. It could go either way. All right, I'm going to now begin to add a little more color to my leaves. And again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to do a lot of talking. I'll do much more talking when it comes time for the workshop. And if you do decide that you're interested in the workshop, but you don't like this stamp, you can use whatever stamp you happen to have. Although I will be using this stamp to teach from, and I think you'll find it much easier to follow along if you're using the same materials as I do. And that materials list will be posted today in the description below. So I'm just going around. I'm just increasing my color. Now with the water-based inks, they do reach a point of saturation where you can't load up the color quite as much as you can with watercolors. So you want to make sure that you don't go too dark too soon, because you could use up all your ammunition in terms of values. And by values, I just mean the lightness and the darkness of the whatever particular tone it is that you're using. I'm getting ready for a big BOGO sale in another, I think it's about a week and a couple of days. And it's going to be a live BOGO sale. I'm also having a lot of studio items. I'm going to be doing a big clean out here in my hometown. But anything that doesn't sell over the weekend, I'm going to be posting in a private group so that you can see all the stamps and die sets, the bundles, the tools, the all the odds and ends that are going to be available. And I will be announcing that in another 2 weeks or so. So if that's something that is interesting to you, make sure that you stay subscribed, that you like my page, so that you will get first dibs on the buy one get one free. And I do have a lot of stuff that's going to be on there, so it's going to be worth looking at. Okay, so I'm not, as I said earlier, I'm not going to be able to finish the whole thing today, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work in this corner. All right, I'm going to leave the rest of the picture alone for now. I'll come back to that after the video. But I'm just going to do this little section right here. And this pattern is so pretty. It reminds me of the Strawberry Thief, the well-known William Morris pattern. In his beautiful, beloved pattern, not only does it have strawberries, but there's also a bird who is the thief who is stealing the berries, and it's just charming. And when you consider all the applications that pattern is used for, whether it's for decorative papers, it's also used on textiles, it's used in wallpaper. Did you know that you can use your stamps on smooth fabric? A smooth textile like a fine cotton or a linen, and then embroider? This would be a stunning stamp to use for embroidery. And you could, for the berries, you could use French knots, or maybe you'd want to do some beading. This pattern is one of those beautiful designs that you don't see too often, less and less. Do you see these beautiful patterns that are so versatile? You could even just cut out a section of it if you want to use it as like a kind of a die cut style layering bit. Just fussy cut the pieces that you like and pop them up on dimensionals, and it would make a really pretty card decoration. All right, I'm going to leave the leaves alone for a minute. I'm going to go back into my berries. I'm just going to start to add some color here and there. Here in New England, we have a type of wild berry that we call black caps, and they start off sort of a greenish yellow when they're just beginning to form, and then they start to turn red, and finally, when they're ripe and ready to eat, they are a deep, rich violet, almost a black, and they are delicious. Those are the ones that you usually have to fight the birds for, because I think they keep an eye on those berries and wait to just the right moment and then gobble them all up. All right, I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer. So there's the section. That's how they're developing so far. I think you can see that pretty well. Now take a quick look, see if there's any questions. Beverly says yes, probably do a last minute, or yes, I know I am. She's talking about taking advantage of those bonus, the bonus day coupons. You know, every little bit helps. And I mean, think about it. If you put in $100 or $50, $150, or that's a 10%. And if you're already a demonstrator and you're already getting 20 or 25%, that additional 10% is on top of that. So it's a good time to stock up on any odds and ends that you've sort of had on your wish list. Your basic supplies like adhesives or tools. Also, you know, there are a number of Christmas and holiday things available now, and it is not too soon to think about getting ready for Christmas. If you're somebody who is interested in making your own Christmas cards, don't wait till the last minute. It'll make you sad and unhappy. Get an early start. I'm going to be promoting the handmade Christmas cards probably beginning in September. And, you know, you want to have a week or two to really knock those things out. And if you wait until October, November, then you've got Thanksgiving, you've got, you're starting your Christmas shopping, and things are, time is going to start disappearing. So start soon. And if you'd like more interest, if you're interested in that, you'd like more information, let me know. And again, all of those Christmas and holiday things will also be announced in that newsletter, Notes from Dandelion Cottage. So make sure, please, that that you don't miss out, that you are a subscriber. Okay, so some of these bigger berries are going to be the ones that are closer to being riper. So they're going to have more of these darker tones in them. So I can add a little bit of that just to make them look a little more delicious. And then I want to get back to my leaves and develop them a little bit more. So I'm going to mix up a slightly darker green now. Now I'm still painting with my larger water painter, and as I begin to get into more of these details, I'm going to switch to my smaller brush. So I'm going to put this one to the side, grab my smaller brush, okay, with the tiny pointy hand point tip. And now I'm going to take an even darker green mixture, so more pigment, more color, less water, and I'm just going to pick up a couple of these details here and there. Now you see the areas that I just worked in are still wet, and so the ink is spreading, which gives you a very nice soft effect, so I'm going to use that to my advantage. And if it bleeds outside the line, that's okay. It doesn't matter. Okay, it's a watercolor effect, and it all adds a nice feeling to the overall design. Okay, so this area that I'm working in is now pretty well saturated. I'm going to add just a couple more touches, and then I'm going to put this aside to dry. Okay, so there we go. Blend that a little bit more. All right, so that is the beginning. Whoops, too much. There we go. So that's how I would go about painting my overall stamp. Now this is not finished yet, but I'm going to leave it for the time being, and then just add a little bit more and work on the rest of the image, and then I will post the finished one as the thumbnail so that you can get an idea of what that looks like. So I'll take a quick look. Beverly says, what ink colors have you used? I may have missed that. It's the same old, Beverly, the red, yellow, and blue. And you can use whatever red, yellow, and blue work best for you. And I would just, think about what the project is that you're going to be creating. If you're going to, for instance, if you're going to use this as a panel on the top of a note card or a tag or a box, what other embellishments or trims or ribbons are you going to be using, because that will influence the color. So the color is optional. You can use whatever you like, but I do recommend that you use red, yellow, and blue, and I recommend using a red, yellow, blue that will give you these nice intermediate mixtures, your greens, your oranges, and your violets. So, we have in the Stampin' Up! Color family collections, I think we've got 50 different colors. So that's a lot of options. So I would just play and experiment and see what you like. And by the way, if any of you do play and experiment and do this and you'd like to share what you've done, please ask to be admitted into the Dandelion Paper Pal group. And the Paper Pal group is my VIP private group for the folks that follow me and like to do these projects. And it gives you a place where you can post what you've done and share them with everybody else and see what everybody else is doing. It's a really sweet group of people, very friendly. And to get in, all you have to do is let me know that you're watching here so I can see who you are, see what your name is, so that when you do ask to be admitted into the Dandelion Paper Pals, I recognize your name and I know that you're legit. So check that out. Oh, Cheryl says she wanted to play pickleball this morning. That is so funny. I have another friend here in town whose name is also Cheryl, and she loves pickleball. And I just saw her this morning, and I almost asked her if she would teach me how to do it. So that's hilarious to see you post that note there. You see, it's a small world. Okay, everybody. I think I've given you plenty to think about, and you know, once you do something like this, if you chose to, you could add some of the glossy accents to make the berries look even more juicy. You could add a little sparkle with the wink of Stella. You could do a little sponging. You know, I love my gold ink. You could add touches of gold ink. So, you know, the sky's the limit, and I want to see what you do, and I want to see what you make with the design after you've completed it. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I will be back next week on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Watercolor Wednesday, and I'll be back again for paper crafting the following Thursday, also right here at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you can't be here at that time, please check out my YouTube channel at Dandelion Cottage Design, where I have a playlist of all of the watercolors that I've been using in the watercolor sketchbook in that garden journal that I showed you that I made. So you might like to check that out. I can't think of anything else. So stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and please subscribe to Notes from Dandelion Cottage so I can send you information about the Painting with Ink class that's coming right up.